Hello again and welcome to Forum for a Better Understanding. Believe it or not, we are now into our 204th weekly presentation of this interfaith dialogue, and we're going to begin a three-part series on a topic we have never quite yet delved into. We're calling it Faith and Mental Health, and we're going to look at the issue of how religion or belief or faith traditions could ever be a support or an ally in the work towards a better dealing with and healing of illness, especially mental illness and distress. This three-part series begins today with three wonderful guests who I'm very, very glad to have back on our program today. To my left is the Reverend Dr. Norman Broadbent, who is the senior pastor at the First Congregational Church here in Fresno, known by many of us as the Big Red Church on Van Ness, a beautiful community, and it's so good to have Norman back on the panel. To his side is Helen Saporin, who is the Vice President of NAMI Fresno, and it is Helen who really developed these next three programs. I want to give her a lot of credit for deciding that we as a community should deal with this issue and bring in three different panels, which she assembled the panels, and I'm really glad for her work in NAMI and also for what she did to make these three shows a reality. Helen.
Thanks.
A good friend is the Reverend Sab Masada, who several months ago was on a program with us talking about the experience of being interned during World War II and the whole understanding of what that would mean for people who have gone through this experience as a Japanese American. But today he is going to share with us in a different key his own commitment towards faith and mental health, even speaking to us about his own family situation. So I want to thank Saab and Helen and Norman for being here, and maybe each one of you could almost reintroduce yourself by saying what faith underneath, what religion, what tradition makes you so compassionate and so interested in this issue of mental health as it impacts you and your own relationships, your congregations, and your own families. Norman, could you start?
Certainly. For me personally, the link between faith and mental health, mental illness, brain diseases, always begins with a personal story. And my own personal journey began growing up in the Northeast corridor where when October came, the sun went away for 3 to 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't until years later when we had attached a name to the phenomena that I and others experienced, which is seasonal affective disorder, which then also plays into roles of depression. And so it wasn't until I was into my late 20s that we finally figured out what was going on. And so I personally have had in my life bouts of depression, but also have understood those moments as being among the most creative, the most insightful, the most spiritually enriching, simply because of the search for a way out of the darkness. And so for me, I speak from a very personal frame of reference. And as we'll talk a little bit later, I also speak from a theological and a faith perspective within my own Christian tradition.
Thanks, Norman. Helen.
Jim, I was raised in the Jewish tradition, and I'm also married to a Buddhist, so I have a little bit of influence there. And I'm also very involved in the Unitarian Church. And with all of those traditions, what I find is how important spirituality and tradition and ritual can be for all of us, particularly for people who are struggling with a physical or a mental illness. And in my Jewish tradition, from where I start, it is our belief that we're here to do tikkun olam, to make the world a better place, and that is where I kind of come from.
Sab.
Well, my Christian faith began when I was in high school, and it was in a very conservative, dogmatic type of Christian faith. But throughout my ministry, I visited mental institutions, and I used to see the people warehoused and just maintained with no hope, as it were. And then suddenly, when our daughter became mentally ill when she was in high school, it really began to give me an opportunity to be educated about what mental illness was and how especially the Christian faith had to me, had often distorted what it was about. And so it was quite a learning experience for me to look at my Christian faith in relationship to mental health.
You know, these next 3 weeks are going to be eye-opening for all of us. I can't wait to see the guest. I haven't had many of the guests coming up, our new forum participants. I'm really looking forward to what they're going to share, and today what we're going to share. Helen, could you open up by starting to tell us a little bit about what mental illness is and why you want to relate it to the area of faith and have it in some sort of a conversation?
Sure. If I could start just with what mental health is, because I think because 80% of us are pretty assured of living a mentally healthy life, we understand what that is. What it is it's a feeling of well-being, a feeling within ourselves that things are good and the world is right. We can make connections with our family, with friends, with our community. We can do well in school, hold a job. We can engage in constructive leisure activities, enjoy pleasures in life, cope with normal stresses. We can get over the anxieties and the sadnesses. But what we do is we think well, we act well, we perform well. And when we think about ourselves, we have a sense of wholeness or rightness, a sense of self-worth. Now, conversely, if we're experiencing illness, and 20% of us will likely experience a mental illness within a lifetime, particularly major depression, that really comes with a profound sense of disturbance internally and in relation to the world. It involves thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that cause us to become isolated from our community, from our friends and family. It's hard for us to do well in school or on the job. We may not experience pleasure in things that we once did enjoy. We may have problems eating, sleeping, thinking, a deterioration of our health, mood swings, terrible anxieties or sadnesses that are ongoing. Some of us even experience frightening sensations and perceptions. But the most important thing is that not only do we, when we're ill, feel this pain, but we also feel a sense of shame and worthlessness.
And where would it be that you think faith really winds up being a positive, if not an antidote, a response? It winds up being making a happy connection. You
know, for so many people, faith is a source of wellness, a source of hope and renewal. For those who are experiencing mental illness, they feel the same things about faith. And so it's often clergy who are the first responders in a crisis. And what we're feeling at NAMI Fresno is that if we have a really informed and caring clergy and a faith community that welcomes people into the traditions and the rituals, then that space is a space of healing and renewal for people with any kind of illness, especially mental illness.
Now, Sab, what's very important is that you said your own daughter became a lesson for you, became a real learning. Could you introduce us to how it was the onset of her illness and also how it progressed?
Well, in 1975, when our daughter was a sophomore and starting that school year, one morning she suddenly appeared back at our house, came through the sliding door, sat on the piano, and she said, "Don't make me go back to school or I'm going to have a nervous breakdown." And my wife and I were surprised and puzzled, and we didn't know what was going on. And so we said, "Carice, what happened?" And she said, "The people in my class are talking about me, and I'm not, and I can't take it, and don't make me go back." And we said, "Carice, we're not going to make you go back to school, but we're going to have to find out what's going on." And so we consulted a family counselor with very little help. And then at that time, of course, we didn't understand mental illness as a brain disorder disease, and therefore all the sessions we had with counselors and psychiatrists were the old traditional idea, which was mental illness having to be having its basis in social factors. But we knew that that she had to get help. The school said, "Why don't you get her a home school teacher so she can finish her school?" So she did that, and she passed her GED test to graduate. And we're so grateful that just a few years after that, there was a wonderful scientific breakthrough in mental health, where they began to understand mental illness as a biological origin through these CAT scans, MRIs, and other new technology. And so the mental health clinics began to help her based on this new understanding with new appropriate medication and therapies, and she was on her road back to recovery. And as I said, I remember those times I had visited mental institutions, and they were just warehoused and just walking around like zombies. And we were really fortunate. And also, as parents, we were very fortunate to have NAMI with its wonderful resources and our local NAMI affiliate in Stockton. And that was a wonderful support for our family.
Now, we want to clarify that NAMI means the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And that's something that is in Fresno, but also, as we heard from Reverend Masada, also in Stockton, it's national, and it's something that deals with this issue across the board, across the country. Sab, about you being a clergyman, a Presbyterian pastor, how was it that in some way reflected on the family response to your daughter's illness, and also the community? How was it conditioned by your being a clergyman?
Well, because I was a pastor, I think it was an advantage to our clergy family, because we had the church there as a wonderful support for us. But initially, because of the traditional ignorance and the stigma associated with mental illness, people who really cared about us and meant well would say things that weren't very helpful. And some of the these are not necessarily church people, but they said things like, "But you're a reverend, you shouldn't have problems like this." And or they would say, "Just kick her out of the house and she'll shape up."
Oh boy.
And of course, others said, "You need to pray for her and have the demons cast out of her." But now with the better understanding of mental illness, there are more and more people in our churches that are more supportive and very helpful. Being a pastor, my family and I have had the opportunity to lead seminars and give sermons and also share our story, and it's as if they were coming out of the closet. People would tell their stories to us, which, and being a pastor, I had a lot of contacts, and that was a wonderful plus for us. Carice has been really fortunate. She had a wonderful psychiatrist from about the year 1988 for about 20 years now. And he says that she's his success story.
Oh, that's great. Good. How is it in the Japanese American community, the effort of dealing with, or the capacity for dealing with mental illness? Is it like in the American culture, or a little different?
Well, because I was serving in a Japanese American congregation, the first thing we did when we found out that we were dealing with mental illness is we met with the immigrant members, because in Japan it's really a frightening thing to deal with mental illness. It's like being crazy. And so we met with them with my broken Japanese language, and we openly had our congregation know about what was going on. The little that we knew, and as we learned more and more, we were able to pass that on. The Asian American community is traditionally has a very negative attitude, of course, and our daughter and I and my wife, we conducted 4 seminars at an annual well-attended family conference of members from the Japanese American churches, and the result wasn't as good as we would have liked, but at least we were able to raise the awareness of mental illness, and we were able to provide wonderful information for their clergy and their churches from NAMI and from groups like FaithNet, which Dr. Gunnar Christensen founded in Southern California, and is now on a national level. Sadly, there are churches that still understand mental illness as a spiritual problem and not a brain disorder disease. But we're making progress, and our religious communities are learning more and more about the true nature of mental illness. And we're grateful for the Forum for Better Understanding for putting on these
Just
series.
so happy that the diocese can host conversations like this. Is there a final word, Sab, about the present struggles or the success right now that you'd like to share about your daughter?
Well, our daughter is currently in Bethesda, Maryland at the National Institute of Mental Health. She's there as a volunteer
Wow.
for a project on schizophrenia, and they're looking for the origin and the cure for schizophrenia. So she's there for about 2 months in
Great.
this project. And we've been in touch with her every day, and she says she's having a wonderful time.
Wonderful.
A wonderful facility, a wonderful staff there. And so she's been there since the 1st of March. She still deals with the symptoms of schizophrenia, which are hallucination and paranoia.
Wow.
But with the medication that has come out, it's been helping her, but she still deals with it, and people have a hard time understanding that although she looks like she's functioning so well,
Yeah.
she still hears these voices, and it's very difficult. But she's learned how to cope with it better and better, and she's doing quite well.
I'm glad to hear that. Norman, what's exciting to follow on Sab is the experience of the last winter with your Blue Christmas. Could you introduce us to that ritual and that experience in your congregation?
Certainly. Actually, it's a worship format that I've worked with for about 10 years. Preceding my coming to Fresno, I was in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and worked with our NAMI chapter there. And in each of the congregations that I have served over the last 30 years, there have been significant numbers of members in the congregation who have experienced the whole range of brain diseases, from schizophrenia to bipolar to depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorders, and the like. One of the things that I was noting, along with some of my colleagues in Minnesota, was that there seemed to be a real spiking of behavioral dysfunction when it came time to the late fall, and especially as we were moving into the holy season. There seems to be a very strong correlation between the onset of the holidays and then the acting out or acting up of these various brain disorders. And recognizing that the symbols and the rituals of the holiday season carry great meaning. Many people experience Christmas feeling guilty, feeling shame because they don't feel happy and light and bright the way everybody else is supposed to do. So what we did was to tap into some work that was being done in other parts of the country in taking the Christmas season within the Christian framework and offering what we've called either a Blue Christmas or a Longest Night service, and to take and to really name what's going on in people's lives, to own the fact that there may be a sense of loss, a sense of disengagement, a sense of living in the darkness, and that the joy of the season is not something that resonates deeply with people. And what we want to do was to simply create a worship setting in which people could bring those very real feelings of sadness, aloneness, isolation, and make those as gifts to the Christ child. To name those and to essentially bless where people are in their journeys, and to give them some sense that they are not alone in that journey, and that in fact the God that at times they feel so distant and removed from is the God who enters into the midst of that very deep, dark, alone place and to offer some comfort and the resources of the wider community to say, we may not entirely understand all of what you're going through, but our commitment is to journey with you and to honor the integrity of the experience that you're having.
So you obviously have seen in these 10 years the impact of ritual and spirituality and rite to help celebrate what it is that is our inner psyche.
Yeah, again, from the traditions that we at this table share, there is embedded deep in our respective traditions, even biblical awareness of this, long before we had 20th century psychoanalysis. Just as a brief bit, just listen to these verses from Psalm 88. O Lord, my God of salvation, at night I cry out in your presence. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. For my soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to Sheol. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. And anybody who's experienced depression really resonates with that image. I am like those who have no help, like those forsaken among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, like those whom you remember no more, for they are cut off from your hand. That sense of isolation, aloneness, resonates deeply within the traditions of our Scripture. And for those of us within the Christian tradition, we certainly recognize part of the healing ministry of Jesus was dealing with people who, in modern parlance, are displaying a lot of the affect of mental illnesses. The concluding part of this that I would share is, and I want to come back to something Helen mentioned at the outset, that mental health is that sense of wholeness. That we're in our religious traditions, we talk about the works of salvation. I always find it ironic that we miss one of the important links to the understanding of that word. In its original setting in Hebrew, the word is yasha. And yasha means to break down the barriers that divide, to fill in the empty places, and to make whole. The work of salvation is breaking down the barriers that divide, filling in the empty places, and making whole. It resonates when Jesus deals with the person who is legion. He does away with those disparate parts of the personality to integrate a whole person. All of those are very resonant parts of our traditions from both the First and the Second Testaments. And therefore, out of that, we can draw a real sense of liturgical purpose. That as we gather each week, as we make that confession, as we offer up thanksgiving, as we lament, that the God who is the God of all enters into the midst of that to make whole, to offer wholeness.
One final thought, but because there's so much personal comment in everything you've shared, what is there perhaps personally, experientially, that winds up directing your clerical ministry?
Again, I think it is because we recognize that everybody is susceptible to these fluctuations of wellness, and that they sit in the pew next to you whatever your place of worship is. They are your neighbors, they are your family, and it is personal.
Oh, it is.
And our faith offers the opportunity to make personal a God who cares, who enters into the healing moments, to just simply help break down those barriers that divide us one from the other.
And what's so beautiful about NAMI, which we want to talk a little bit about that right now, this National Alliance for Mental Illness. Could you tell us a little bit, Helen, about the resources and the projects and the efforts that you're making at your office, and tell us about some events and some things that people could take advantage of?
Sure. I wanted to go back to what Reverend Saab was saying about NAMI FaithNet, because that's a national network within NAMI of clergy, of providers, of consumers who have this interest of using faith as another means of support for recovery. And we here in Fresno are forming a little FaithNet ourselves. So viewers who are interested can notice our phone number later that we'll talk about, or now, which is 224-2469.
And this FaithNet is a website to go to, or Or what
At
is
the national, yes, at the national NAMI, www.nami.org, and you can get to the FaithNet through that. And within our Fresno affiliate, you need to call 224-2469, and we'll get people in touch. We
It's
have
a
a little
wonderful
email
office
list,
you
yeah.
have, and a wonderful staff.
And we have a lot of support groups for family members who have an ill family member, for the consumer, his or herself. We have support for parents of young children. And we have classes for families. We'll be actually offering a brand new class for families with young children with mental illness. So we're very excited about our support services. We also have an extensive library for children and adults and providers. People are welcome to come in and use those resources at any time.
Now, there is an event that we can all participate in different ways. Tell us about the walk and what it is we better start doing now that we're watching this program. What can we do?
Okay, on May 10th, on a Saturday, right before Mother's Day, we're going to have our 3rd annual NAMI walk for the Mind of America, and that will be at Woodward Park. And just come at 7:30 to 8:30 to register at Woodward Park. Come in at the Audubon entrance and watch for the signs. Last year we had probably about 1,200 people. And we
Awesome.
served lunch to all of them. We had a great day with snow cones and face painting. And it's a day when you don't have to be ashamed of having a mental illness.
Oh, that's a wonderful turnout for an event.
Yes, it was. It was very exciting.
Good.
So we welcome you to come.
Again, try to be in touch with the NAMI office. One more time, that phone number. Let people know. One more time.
224-2469.
Call. Make a connection. People can volunteer.
Absolutely.
You may think you don't have the need for services at this moment. You don't know that you won't ever. And you also know that you could be perhaps on the helping end on this one at the start. You must need, I guess, all the help you can get.
We would love volunteers. And, you know, with respect to the FaithNet, what we feel is that there's a double blessing here when we integrate faith and mental health for the giver and the receiver.
Oh, yeah.
There's that sacred moment. So we encourage your participation.
I'm going to give each of you maybe 20 seconds for a final thought that might be your last chance to tell the viewers how important this is to you. Reverend Masada first.
When we did our seminars, those who attended said one thing in common. They said the church was the most difficult place for them to go to, because they would either be told, we'll pray for you, or you should be more, read your Bible more. And it was very difficult. And so I'm concerned that our churches get raise their awareness of mental illness, because that's where people need to be to get support.
I want to thank our panel today, Reverend Sab Masada, Helen Siporin, and Reverend Dr. Norman Broadbent, for sharing so much about their own personal commitment to mental wellness and mental health, and how faith can be a positive influence. Let's take up from the Reverend the idea that we better not make faith a problem.